My name is Mary, RSM National Business Development Leader. RSM is number 6 biggest accounting firm in the world. We have 820 offices in over 120 countries. In Australia, we have 31 offices. Joining me today, we have RSM National Head of Property and Construction, partner Adam Clowley, CEO of DCF Group, Kevin Huang, and the Director of CRX Capital, Jason Xie. We also have the keynote speaker, the Honorable Michael Saka, MP, Federal Member for Deakin, Assistant Treasurer, Minister for Housing, and Minister for Homelessness, Social and Community Housing. He will join us later at 2:30 p.m. Topics will include housing affordability and solutions, commercial property investment and commercial real estate debt, and the implications of and recovery from the global pandemic for commercial property with a focus on hotels. If you have any questions for the panels, please input your questions in the Q&A chatting box in the Zoom. Adam will be the MC and moderator for this webinar. He will also share his professional experience in property industry. 大家下午好，非常欢迎大家参加 RSM 房地产论坛。RSM 是世界第6大会计师事务所，在全球120多个国家有820多间办公室，在澳洲我们有31个办公室。今天的发言嘉宾为澳大利亚联邦住房部长、助理部长兼无家可归社会与社区住房部长侯 Michael Saka 阁下，大地房地产创始人兼首席执行官开封黄先生， CRX Capital 总经理三生谢先生。Saka 部长将在2点半加入我们。埃德姆将担任本次网络研讨会的主持人，他将分享他在房地产行业的专业经验。So it's over to you, Adam.
Thank you very much, Mary. Good afternoon all on this Friday, start of the new financial year. I'm sure everybody's into the thick of it for business. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us on this webinar today. We're very lucky to have Calvin from DCF Capital, from DCF Property, Selson from CIX Capital, and the Honourable Michael Saka join us a little bit later on this afternoon. We are running through some hot topics and trends in property. I'll be facilitating the discussion today. We look forward to hearing from our panelists. I'll see if I can get the slides moving forward. Just a quick one before we kind of dive in. Some of the people attending will be familiar with RSM. Some might just be coming to understand RSM for the first time. My role at RSM, I'm the National Head of Property and I look after our property and construction clients across the country. A little bit of background on RSM for those that don't know. Mary mentioned at the beginning, we do have over 30 offices across the country. Our partner numbers are recently increasing with new appointments, I think on 1 July as well, so those numbers are up. And next year or the year after will be our 100 years in operation. So it is a very long-standing firm. We are very proud of our firm's tradition. Globally, we're in 120 countries, 820 offices, and we've got over 48,000 people. So it is a large network and a very large accounting firm. I think we're 6th largest network globally, and we're continuing to grow, particularly in the property and construction space. It gives us the ability to assist clients with foreign inbound operations or operations extending overseas, and be able to advise them through the total chain of whatever it is they're doing in their property or development work. A quick one, we're very proud last year to be the winner of the Client Choice Awards. This was nominated by our clients as the best accounting firm and consulting firm. And then we were really excited when we won it again for 2021. So another very great achievement for the firm. And I guess thank you to all our clients for those that voted and continue to support us. So we're very happy to win 2 years in a row, and we're looking forward to doing that again in 2022. A quick just overview, some of the work we do in the property space. I keep it very light. Look, it extends to all areas of the business. There's a lot of advisory work in terms of outsourced accounting, the accounting functions and financial reporting functions of the business, everything in the tax services space in terms of structuring transactions, GST, duty, foreign inbound, exit strategies, that sort of thing. We're doing a lot of work in that space. We extend into various different risk advisory services, audit services, and corporate compliance services as well, including IPOs and listings and that sort of work. We do have some specialist services in helping with raising funding, establishment of different debt structures, restructures. We have access to off-market opportunities, and we have historically assisted clients with different ASX listings and closure of entities at the end of their development life. At this point, after the little sales pitch, I'm going to now throw over to one of our first presenters, Calvin, from DCF Property, who's going to give us a bit of an update on the hotel industry recovery off the back of COVID. Calvin, I'll pause there and throw over to you. We look forward to hearing from you. I think you're just on mute there, Calvin.
Hi, Adam. Can you hear me? Good afternoon, all the audience. And I just want to thank you, RSM, for inviting me to this presentation. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Selson. And I think later on to the Mr. Honorable Michael Suga. Something I want to share with the audience today. DCF Property is a diversified property developer based in Melbourne, but we extended to Tasmania in the recent years. And we have a mixed-use development, commercial property development, and hotel property development over in CBD Fringe, Port Melbourne, Station Pier, Launceston, and Hobart. And based on that, we have done many years of research based on hotel, and we have a particular team working on the hotel recovery post-COVID research. Next page. What we found, the word for 2021, we found two keywords. One of them is intrastate rather than interstate. The other one is longer stay rather than shorter stay. Next page. So based on the data of 2019 and 2021 during COVID, what we found that 60% of the intrastate traveler was spent locally, and they formed a major part of the our economic spending in hotel, food and beverage industry that considered really $14 billion versus $6 billion. Next page. And very importantly, the amount of money spent on accommodation versus interstate is $45 billion spent on accommodation and $35 billion on accommodation rather than $30 billion from interstate. Next page. And what we found that in 2021 and 2020, we have lost the international traveler, but let's look at what they're spending in 2019. A lot of the money are spent on international flights, educations, and package tour. There's actually less money spent on food, drink, accommodation. There's only 30% of them spent on food and accommodation. So I think if we are having a portfolio of a hotel asset, whether you're CBD or regional, your focus should be intrastate, and your focus should be longer stay versus a shorter stay. And one of the very key, before I prepared for this presentation, I actually make a call to one of hotel consultants. There's actually no good news for CBD owners within the CBD, Melbourne or Sydney. The occupancy rate is quite low at the current stage. But what we found that Perth and Brisbane have done differently is they actually promote extending the work travel to weekend travel. So promote your branding, your business, your tour package to workers coming from other interstates, and promote them to stay longer over the weekend. Next page. And there's some positive about 2021. We definitely hit a drop in 2020 where we only got 72 million trips made in 2020, and we have jumped back to 130 million trips this year, which is quite positive. And number of spending have increased from $45 billion to $134 billion. Some of the takeaway I mentioned before, some of the hotel can be upgraded for weekend luxury travel, city getaway, virtual conference. A lot of the conference room can be upgraded to accommodate small group conference, but with wider audience through technology. That's one of the things that we found some of the CBD owners have done over the 2020 period. That's the data we have shown, 49% in May. Our average rate, Melbourne CBD is sitting at $160, down $21 from our 180 average daily rate. The highest performance dates is Friday nights, Saturday nights, and the staycation weekends. I think through our research, the research team has also grabbed the opportunity in Melbourne, which we got a lot of festival coming up. The ski travel period between now to August and September, we got the AFL. Make sure that if you're a CBD owner, you're ready for it. The Melbourne Cup coming in November, hopefully that happen. The Christmas period, and then the upcoming Australian Open in Jan, and the Melbourne Festival in March and May next year. That will be the main focus in festival. And I know the occupancy rate will stay low, but that might be one of the key festival you want to grab and able to keep your occupancy rate above the average. One of the great lesson, no, go back one. Yep, one of the great lessons we learned from our team, we studied Airbnb over the COVID period. Airbnb have done really well, and they quickly have changed their strategy from short stay to even longer stay, and encourage their owners to enjoy the new program called Go Near, which focus on the local markets, supporting the local cafe, the local food. And this has done by American Express as well. American Express got something called Shop Smaller. Those big major institutionals has go closer to the local market. If you are regional business owners with hotel assets or portfolio of Airbnb assets, I think you're the lucky portion that you should continue to work on the scheme that go near, talk to the local cafes, talk to the local markets, understand what's unique around you, and make sure that you inform your guests what's near you. Something that done great about Airbnb over this period, they also had promote Go Longer, which you get a better rate if you stay from 3 days to 7 days, from 7 days to 21 days. That will be a great help for a lot of the, not only the intrastate during the holiday, school holiday period, but also the interstate that come into Melbourne. They would love to explore the differences from other states. And this model that we have studied over the last 5 years is a hotel management model that quite popular in US, which is the franchise hotel agreement versus the hotel management agreement. Well, if you look at the fees, though, both fees are marginal difference, and the cost of running a internal hotel office is quite high. But after COVID, I spoke to a number of peers. They actually changed the view from, letting the institutional hotel brand to manage their assets for them, to partially manage the asset for them, but have a full hotel team available in-house to run the franchise. One of the biggest benefits is during COVID, a lot of the staff is a big issue. A lot of the staff training become an issue. If you are using the traditional hotel management model, you may not get the full support from some of the boutique brands. So having your own franchise brand, franchise team, you're not only utilizing the platform to sell your rooms, but you got your internal team to continue the training, active manage your asset. At the end of the day, you are the asset owners. And DCF actually have adopted this model. We will be using this model in our project in South Melbourne, which we have developed the branding with a new, very boutique brand in New York, run by Philip Stark architect. And we also have run that on our Port Melbourne hotel, which will be very boutique, very unique, but focus on local GMs who understand the market, who greet your clients like their friends. So that's one of the powerful thing about running a franchise with the hotel branding. You get more control. You run the asset like yours, and you don't hand it over to the hotel in totality. And next page, friend. So just at the end of my presentation, with all the data and agreement that we study over the years, we want to talk a bit about a pipeline that developed by DCF Property. We have finished about 100 million residential and mixed-use project up to date. We have about $1 billion of products running in the next 10 years over in Melbourne and Tasmania, CBD Fringe, CBD, and also Tasmania, Hobart, and Launceston. We welcome you to join us in this discussion, and we'll thank once again Mary, Adam, RSM for inviting us to the presentation.
Thank you very much, Calvin. Very insightful, and it's good to see some first-hand data there coming out of the property industry in the hotel space. We might, if anyone does have any questions as we go, I can see one down the bottom. What we might do at this time, we might just hold off on some of the questions until the end. We do have a Q&A panel, but if people do have questions, please do put them into the chat, and we can address those as we go. I'm going to pause now and introduce our next presenter, Mr. Selson Z from CIX Capital. Selson, we look forward to hearing from you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Adam. Good afternoon, all. Well, first thing first, I mean, really thank you, Adam, Mary, and the RSM team for inviting me to participate in this session today, alongside Calvin and also the minister, who's going to come in to join us in a few minutes' time. As an investment manager and fund manager in the commercial property market, I feel honored and of course, and very excited today to actually share what we have observed in the commercial property market in 2021 so far, and also happy to share our observation on the commercial property debt market landscape and what we will look like in terms of the outlook. So let me just see if I can turn the screen. I think I'm running a little bit fast. Now back on. Certainly we've observed a lot of things and a lot of highlights for the past, I would say, 12 and 18 months. But I will probably more focus on the last 6 months because each of us actually certainly in the world have experienced quite a year, 2020, unlike many others. And we went through a very tough year of 2020, and now we are in 2021. And we observed that, you know, Australian economy certainly has bounced back and still, you know, basically rapidly recovering since the COVID lockdown late last year in Q4 2020. And based on a lot of recent economic data and key indicators, and this trend will remain to be the case and for the next 6 months and 12 and 18 months. And from our observation, the overall sentiment in the commercial property market space is certainly also improving across the board, of course, to a different extent and different asset class will have the different performance and for the last 6 months. And if you look at the chart that we extracted from a recent industry index, and you can see different color lines, and there's a commercial property index line, and also office, retail, industrial, CBD hotels lines. We can see the general commercial property market certainly still below what we call the pre-COVID level. Reason being is we're still in a recovery phase. So the gray bars on the far right of the chart is still a bit of below the zero level, we call it, but we can see that the trend is certainly coming back up rapidly from most of the back end of 2020 and the first half of 2021. Among all the sub-asset class, and we see industrial assets, for example, the logistics and distribution centers and the warehousing are standing out. So they are coping the weather. They're basically coping the challenge of COVID-19 really well. Reason being is, life and work styles are getting changed to a lot of us, and people are certainly changing their buy behavior as well. They're buying for online. So that's why like a lot of distribution centers and warehouses are certainly demands are surging on that aspect. In compared to the industrial asset, just to move to the next slide. Yeah, we can also see that some other asset classes like CBD offices and retail and hotels that what Calvin just mentioned are still being weighed by the COVID-19 and lockdowns. And you can see like at the moment in New South Wales and Queensland, they're currently under lockdown, and certainly these sort of asset class are getting impacted. To the CBD office front, we see the degree of vaccination rollout and offices workers to return to the office in the CBD will certainly determine the performance and capital growth for the forthcoming period. Outlook for retail and CBD hotel are still quite subdued, pretty much in line with what Calvin mentioned in his session in the remaining 2021 and first half of 2022, underpinned by any possible subsequent lockdowns and continued border closure and net population loss that will certainly put further pressure on this sector for the period of time. In terms of the development front, we actually spoken to a few developers lately, and we found the sentiment of them to plan and start new construction works definitely right or well opposite compared to same time last year, 2020. Reason being is they don't think that initial disruption by a pandemic, really sort of really remain, and also the recent market activities and price are certainly in favor of them to doing so. So that's more sort of our observation. However, demand for constructions and development pipeline has picked up. We see the COVID disruption and impact on the supply chain, particularly on the construction and building services supply chain, is quite significant at the moment, and the rising cost of construction certainly is causing challenges to developers and builders to deliver their project on time and on budget. On the other side of the equation, the funding side, which is what we're familiar with and we oversee day in, day out, is continuing to improve. Basically because we are in an unprecedented low rate and high liquidity environment. And just moving to the next slide, which is happening now on the screen. We actually see that improving funding condition is driven by a lot of factors, but one of the factors that we see and we basically overseeing every day is the commercial real estate debt market. Just sort of a bit of a definition of that, and for all the audience, and we all want to call it is a CRED, C-R-E-D. So that's sort of a terminology we know every day we call. So CRED actually relates to provision of loans to the commercial borrower for development, investment, acquisition, and improvement of the properties. And those loans certainly are basically to support financing of those like residential, retail, industrial, hotels, and other specialized real estate assets. And we actually provided you a diagram or a chart on the bottom right to show how basically this credit works with the real estate life cycle. And basically those loans are including land loans and construction loans and investment loans across the life cycle of a real estate. For example, land loans normally will be to support the front end of the life cycle, which is the land acquisition, planning permit, and pre-construction phase. And after that, a developer will need a construction and development loan to support the construction of the project. Once that's completed, investment loans and other loans will kick in to support the ongoing operation of the property. So that's basically how it works in the credit space. Just a bit of a landscape of the credit market. It's already reached over $300 billion in 2021, which is only halfway through, and it represents 1/5 of the loan book, we'll call it commercial and corporate loan books of the domestic banking system. And mainstream Australian banks, predominantly the big four banks, we know, still hold quite a dominant position, roughly around 75% of the space. And we also seen that non-bank lending is certainly the emerging power, and they are going to reach quite a significant amount, $50 billion by 2024, with the following reasons. So we actually outline three main reasons, and that $50 billion gap is going to be filled by the non-bank lender purely because that's also the additional capital reserve requirement imposed by the regulator to the mainstream banks. Local banks and foreign banks or financial institutions, as we know, they will continue to focus on what they like, predominantly financing the prime assets, with a long-term yield and long-term rental and low leverage, and whereas the non-bank lenders then have the comfort or appetite to fund assets with relatively higher risk and shorter tenor, but certainly reach a higher return perspective. And non-bank lenders, as far as we see, they are a lot more relaxed and flexible in terms of the conditions and approval conditions and funding conditions, and so for the borrower to access to the required capital. So why commercial real estate debt like credit? Why investing in this space, and why this space actually is emerging and becoming a driving force? We see the last few years, like particularly like post GFC, credit certainly has already developed a track record of a consistent performance, and it is seen as a fixed income investment instrument, which is a loan secured by commercial property, and from a lot of investors' point of view, it is actually playing an important role, performing as a defensive asset, effective for the investors to consider when they're doing their diversification of investment in their portfolio. And I think the defensive asset attribute certainly reflects that in the times of uncertainties and volatility, like the GFC global financial crisis, and the COVID-19 period, which is we still a bit of in this period. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, credit market is still relatively small compared to some other OECD economies like the United States and Europe. So that represents basically a great opportunity to grow and opportunity for people to sort of continue to develop. So just a bit of about ourselves and what we do. As I mentioned, we are an investment company firm that specializes in providing commercial real estate investment and finance solution. We talk to investors and we talk to developers and property investors, and so that's our day-to-day job, and our observation certainly it's important to support us what we do every day with our valued customers. And if you want to know a little bit more about ourselves, this is our website, and you know, and alternatively, you can contact our team, including myself, contact below. So I think that wraps up my presentation, Adam.
Thank you,
Over to
sir. Thanks, mate. Very informative. We are definitely seeing a push there in the non-bank lending sector. We see a lot of activity in that space. I've got a couple of questions for you at the end of this. I'm mindful we've been joined by the Honourable Michael Suka MP. Michael, thank you for taking the time in your busy schedule to join us today. Thank you so much for coming along. Look, we look forward to hearing from you. I know there's been a lot on the first home loan deposit scheme that's all come out. I'm sure you've been busy talking. I've been following your tweets yesterday and today. A lot of activity. Would love to hear from you.
Well, thanks so much, Adam. I'll kick off now, and obviously Adam and Mary, it's great to join you. I don't do a whole host of these sorts of events, but I was really drawn to joining in today because I think it's such an interesting time in the broader market. It's a really interesting time for first home buyers. And I think there's some additional investor activity that's just started to creep into the Australian market. And we all know that you just have to open up the newspapers every day, and Australian property is a source of fascination to so many Australians, and it's such an important asset class as well. So great to join you, and I do appreciate it. We've obviously, over the last 3 years that I've been the Housing Minister, had a significant focus on, as I alluded to at the beginning, first home buyers. I mean, from our perspective, home ownership, providing people a realistic prospect of owning their own home is one of the most important things that we can provide Australians. Equally, for those who want to invest in property and ensure that those investments provide them with a secure future are just as important. And you'll all know, in the lead up to the last election, you know, a significant source of difference between the parties was the taxation or arrangements associated with investment properties, the government defending the existing tax arrangements to support investors, and the Labor Party, which wanted to abolish negative gearing, double capital gains tax and others. So it was certainly a big source of difference in the lead up to the election, and I think we've been vindicated and proven correct for having defended the more than 1 million Australians who invest in property to secure their own future, but equally to double down on our efforts to support first home buyers. And in saying, Adam, that you've watched my Twitter feed over the last couple of days, you've obviously referring to a few of the measures in relation to our guarantee schemes. We've, broadly speaking, got 3 guarantee schemes in place at the moment. The first home loan deposit scheme, which helps first home buyers purchase their first home with a deposit of 5%. The new home guarantee, again, for first home buyers to enable them to purchase a new home. So that's a brand new or newly built home with a deposit of 5%. So that's a policy to support not only first home buyers, but also the residential construction industry in encouraging more supply of new housing. And then the newest of the guarantee schemes, which is the family home guarantee, which is a program to enable single parents to purchase their first home, to purchase a first home with a deposit of as little as 2%. And I'll speak a little bit about those, Adam, but those are the 3 schemes we've got in place at the moment. But to go back, we put in place the first home loan deposit scheme at the 1st of January 2020. Since then, we've assisted nearly 30,000 first home buyers to purchase their first home, which has been a phenomenal success. In fact, demand for the programs outstripped really the places, which is why we keep growing. We keep growing the program. We also put in place last year the Home Builder program, which was a $25,000 grant to support anybody who purchased a new home. And I think it's hard to talk about the current property environment if we don't talk a lot about the Home Builder program. In essence, last year when the pandemic hit, the residential construction industry was on its knees. First home or new home sales fell off a cliff in the middle of a pandemic. No one was going to be making that huge investment. That put at risk 500,000 jobs in the residential construction industry. And as everybody on this call will know, if you lose that capacity from your residential construction industry, it's very hard to get it back. In fact, jobs that you can lose in 1 year take many, many years to get back. So we put in place the Home Builder Grant, a $25,000 grant for people purchasing a new home. It basically overnight saw sales skyrocket. And we're now in a position where we've got first home buyers that have increased by about 55%. We've got 155,000 first home buyers in the year to March. The long run average is about 100,000. So a 55% increase in first home buyers, people who have taken advantage of that $25,000 grant to purchase a new home. And importantly, it supported the 500,000 jobs in the residential construction industry. We've got new home sales now that are about 40% higher than they were pre-pandemic. So not only have we recovered the market as a result of the pandemic, it's now 40% busier, 40% bigger than it was pre-pandemic. And so, yes, that was important to protect the jobs in the residential construction industry, but it's crucially ensured that pipeline, that new supply of housing stock continues to flow into the market. And could you imagine what the residential property market would look like if we didn't have that new supply of housing? So the Home Builder program supported nearly 140,000 projects. 140,000 new homes were built as a result of the Home Builder program. And we think it's been a marquee success in protecting those jobs, but also in having home ownership at its highest level for nearly 15 years. So first home buyers are now at their highest levels since about 2008, 2009, which again, if you just read the newspapers and didn't look at the data, you would be very surprised to see that first home ownership levels are at such elevated highs. But this indicates, and is, in my view, a product of a lot of hard work and emphasis that we've placed on supporting first home buyers. So to touch on the budget, as you alluded to, Adam, and some of the measures we put in place. The first, as I said, was to put in place the family home guarantee. So you remember I said at the start, there's broadly 3 categories of guarantees. The first home loan deposit scheme, which helps first home buyers purchase an established property with a deposit of 5%. The new home guarantee to help first home buyers purchase a brand new home with a 5% deposit, and the family home guarantee to help single parents who may have owned a property in the past. You don't need to be a first home buyer. Single parents who've got dependent children to purchase a property with a 2% deposit. What are all these schemes basically getting at? Well, in a record low interest rate environment, they all of these schemes recognise, including the $25,000 home builder grant, mind you, they all recognise that the biggest barrier to purchasing your first home is the deposit. That deposit hurdle is the single most significant factor stopping people purchasing their own home. And so with the guarantee schemes, we bring down the effective deposit required from 20%, which is increasingly what banks are requiring now, down to 5% in the case of the first home loan deposit scheme and the new home guarantee, and 2% in the case of the family home guarantee. So it makes it eminently more achievable for those groups to get that smaller deposit together, to get into the market. And as we know, once you get your foot on the property ladder, then you are less prone to the cycles of and the growth in house prices, because you've got an asset yourself that is part of that market. And so the final piece of that in the last budget was the family home guarantee, which was the 2% deposit. We've got 10,000 places available. Those 10,000 places became available a couple of days ago. The banks are indicating to me that there is a huge demand for those. Another 10,000 places in each of the first home loan deposit scheme and new home guarantee. These, I think, will all be places that go relatively quickly. And the government's watching very closely on the demand for the schemes and the prospect of growing them, making them bigger, making them more accessible. They're always on the table. And I know that there's often questions in these sorts of meetings about the house price caps. We raised the house price caps for the 1st of July this year, which recognises growth in certain markets, but also those caps have increased above and beyond what we've seen in property price growth. So it really is expanding the accessibility of the scheme. We've also, in the budget, expanded another scheme of ours, the First Home Super Saver Scheme. In essence, if I was to boil it down to you, for anybody that's saving for their first home, they should be doing the First Home Super Saver Scheme. In essence, you salary sacrifice savings into your superannuation fund. We give you a 30% tax cut or tax reduction on those contributions. You get the earnings inside the fund, and then up to $50,000 per person, so $100,000 for a couple, you can then take that salary sacrifice money out of your super and use it to purchase your first home. So nobody should be saving, in my view, their deposit inside a regular bank account or term deposit or savings account. Everybody should be using the First Home Super Saver. You get the tax cut, plus you get the earnings inside your super that are much higher than any earnings you'll get on a bank deposit saving account. The numbers, in fact, show that if you save the maximum, so if you're a single person, you use the First Home Super Saver Scheme and you salary sacrifice up to $50,000, and you can take as many years as you need to do that, you will save $10,000 in tax, which just means you've got an extra $10,000 for your house deposit rather than $10,000 that you're paying the Australian Tax Office. So it's the most effective tax arrangement to help, again, to get back to that problem, to help people get over that deposit hurdle. And the First Home Super Saver Scheme in the budget, we increased it from 30 to 50,000. So I'd encourage Adam and Mary, you should be talking to everyone you know. If you're not already doing the First Home Super Saver and you're saving for your first home, you should start now. It's very simple. All you've got to do is let the tax office know. You start salary sacrificing into your super and you start saving tax immediately and putting that tax saving into your deposit for a first home. So really, really important policy. Again, supporting first home buyers and levelling the playing field. To go back also where I started, we've also made it explicitly clear in the budget that we are not going to be supporting any changes to the taxation arrangements on people who hold investment properties. And there's a very simple rule in politics or in economics, in my view. If you want less of something, you tax it more. So if you want people to smoke less, you put more taxes on cigarettes. If you want people to build less houses, you tax it more heavily. And that was really our main disagreement with the Labor Party at the last election. Labor wanted to tax housing more, and our argument was, well, that would be very destructive, not just for those people who are trying to create a secure future for themselves through property investment, but will also lead to less houses being built. Again, if you tax something more, you'll get less of it. And we really refocused in this budget and reiterated that we will not be taxing and do not support taxing the property market anymore. It might not be a surprise to many people on this call, but in Sydney, the cost of a new apartment, 44% of the cost of a new apartment is represented in taxes and regulatory imposts, 44%. And that gets passed straight on to the end consumer, the purchaser of that apartment. In Melbourne, it's 37%. So 37% of the cost of a new home, of a new apartment in Melbourne, is taxes and regulatory imposts. So our view is The last thing the property sector needs is more tax. If anything, it needs less tax. So we've definitely reiterated that point. We also believe that we need to support people along the housing spectrum. So I've spoken a lot about first home buyers and the things we're doing to support first home buyers, which have led to, as I said, first home buyers being at their highest levels for nearly 15 years. So it shows it's working. But we also need to support people in the private rental market, people who are living in social and affordable housing, and of course, those people who are suffering or facing the risk of homelessness. So what we have done, whether it's $5.5 billion a year that we spend on the Commonwealth Rental Assistance Program to help people who are in the rental market, the $1.6 billion a year that we use to support the states and territories discharge their obligations through the National Housing and Homelessness Agreements, we are investing significant amounts of money to support people all along the housing spectrum. And that doesn't include the National Housing Finance Investment Corporation, which has lent nearly $3 billion to community housing providers, concessional loans to help them to deliver thousands of social and affordable homes that are provided for people who are requiring subsidised housing, who are requiring housing to protect them from homelessness or people facing domestic violence. And those investments have been the single biggest investments that the Commonwealth Government has ever made into the community housing sector ever. So we're, yes, extraordinarily focused on first home buyers, extraordinarily focused on supporting investors, because we know investors support new supply, and we need new supply of housing to push down pressure on house prices. But there's so much more work to do. COVID-19, I think, has seen, quite surprisingly for a lot of people, but not surprising to anyone who's lived through a lockdown, that the value that people place on their home now, I mean, it's always been high, but it's even greater now. And, people are willing to, for the amenity, to be in the area they want to be, are willing to invest so much of their own wealth towards it, because, well, we've all experienced just how important having a small piece of Australia that to call your own, to retreat to when you need to be when you need to. And that, I think, is going to continue. I don't want to get in the prediction game, Adam, because it's not good for politicians to pretend to be economists, but I think we've seen a remarkable growth in residential housing prices. I think that'll plateau a bit. I think that'll be healthy. I think we want it to plateau. I don't think we want it going crazy forever. I think the consensus view is that that should start to get back to, I think, more reasonable levels of growth in the latter end of this year. But the fundamentals of the market are good. The biggest problem, to end on this, the biggest problem we face, and this ties into my comments around the taxation arrangements, the biggest problem we face is the constraints on new supply. And when you've got demand outstripping supply, no wonder you see house price growth where it is. And so we have to, as a country, get better at tackling that supply issue. That's obviously predominantly controlled by states and territories and local governments who control the planning and zoning schemes. They need to get better at encouraging more supply. We've literally got $19 billion of housing projects that are currently sitting in front of state planning authorities or local government planning authorities. 19 billion that's sitting there, with bureaucrats shuffling papers, in many cases not making decisions for many, many years. What does that do? Yes, it's got an economic consequence because it slows projects, or in some cases stops projects from happening. But importantly, it means less housing supply is entering the market, which is obviously having a negative impact on affordability. So the answer to so many of our questions is more supply. The federal government, unfortunately, doesn't control that lever, but we're going to encourage the states and territories to do everything they can to, in a sense, get out of the way and let the market operate, let more supply into the market. I think that'll be good for first home buyers, good for downsizers and good for investors. So thanks very much, Adam. Great to be with you.
Michael, thank you so much for that. Very, very insightful and good to hear all the things that are happening there. I do realise you have to leave at 3 o'clock sharp. We were going to just quickly throw to a couple of quick questions. I might start by sort of saying a lot of the people on the call today, clients RSM are heavily in the property space. They were all applauding to hear you say there should be less tax in the property sector. So I think we're all on the same page there. Just from the schemes that have been released, do you have any thoughts on what the effect on that would be, particularly on property prices? It seems to be, if we're it's aimed at helping people get a leg up. Do we think that that'll have a positive or negative kind of push on property prices generally?
Well, look, we don't think it'll have an appreciable impact. I mean, there's 2 days ago we released the 30,000 places. 10,000 places for first home loan deposit scheme, 10,000 for new home guarantee, and 10,000 for family home guarantee. Because they are in effect guarantee schemes, they're not putting more money directly in the pocket of purchasers, so they're less likely to inflate prices. They're really all about empowering people to get finance. You know, a bank won't give you finance if you don't have 20% unless you use one of these schemes. Right. So it's not giving you extra firepower in that sense to go out and spend more. It's just enabling you to get the finance that you can service and that you can responsibly service. And it's really converting a big cohort of people from renters to buyers. But I don't think it's putting more liquidity into the market to push up prices, which, let's be frank, is what we've seen in the past with first home owner grants. But we certainly haven't seen that evidence with this scheme so far.
That's good. Okay, I mean, good to hear on that. Look, I might quickly throw 2 problems at a time. I might quickly just have a quick read of the questions that are put in the Q&A. If you do have any questions for any of our speakers today, including the Honourable Michael Sugar, please post them in the chat and I'll try to get to them. We've had one query that's sort of come up. The newly released population report shows that Australia's population growth is very fast. From a long-term perspective, will the real estate and construction industries be affected? I mean, I think that touches on, I guess, the supply and demand part there. I know a lot of our clients are screaming for the release of property and land and things like that, and I think that's the continual balance in the supply and demand game. Calvin, Selson, Michael, any thoughts on that?
Look, I think we've got a short-term population issue. And we released the intergenerational report on Monday, which showed that, the 2 drivers of population, obviously net overseas migration, but also births. Births are now down to 1.6 births per woman, which is the replacement rate's 2.1. So, significant pressures on some of our population growth. But look, we run a big skilled migration program ordinarily. I think it's just a matter of time before we get back to that. The budget assumes that to occur in a couple of years' time when we get back to business as usual migration. So I think population growth for Australia in the medium term still looks pretty solid. But then that gets back to the problem I just spoke about. We've got to get better at making sure that states and territories release enough land and enough approvals to house all the additional people. Because if you don't do that, all you see is rampant house price growth, which we all want to see the market grow, but we want to see it grow at a sustainable rate, not at a level that's that pricing people out of the market. Yeah, no, agreed. Another quick query we had in the chat. So this is to you, Mr. Minister. So the build-to-rent sector is going through unprecedented growth in Australia, with a huge number of projects being planned or set to start construction in the next 12 months. Do you think the build-to-rent is a good way to moderate Australia's housing affordability crisis while providing alternate opportunities for residential developers and stable long-term income for institutional investors? Build-to-rent's a bit of a hot topic. We've done a bit of work and some feasibility studies internally at RSM for some clients who are looking at that sector. Any thoughts there, Michael, as a solution, the build-to-rent and housing affordability? Look, I've got nothing against build-to-rent. The only problem with it is that the choke point for our market is not whether it's build to sell or build to rent, the choke point are the approvals, and that's really that's the constraint we face now. So I want more approvals of projects, whether that's build to rent or build to sell. Build to rent, we think there's definitely a market for it. Institutional investors, as far as long-term stable income, it's really good to deploy institutional capital. But again, let's be honest. The pinch point for our market is not the capital flowing into property. There's a lot of capital that wants to be deployed into property. We just can't get it deployed quickly enough because the approval processes are so truncated, so slow. Look, we support build to rent. They've got to operate on the same level playing field as everybody else. But I'm not sure build to rent or build to sell, either of them are the solution. If you don't include in that reform to planning and zoning, that's got to be part of it.
Yeah,
Adam Selson here. I've got a couple of quick sort of
comments
to BTR. I guess echoing what the minister mentioned about the approval levels and the supply. I guess build to rent's been proven a very successful model in the States and in European countries, and there's no way that Australia cannot be successful on that. But I guess from our experience in talking to the build to rent operators and builders, and I guess a few things that we need to be aware that the challenges, like the mindset of Australian toward the build to rent could be a little bit different from our traditional build to sell model. I think that's one thing. And of course, feasibility study from a developer point of view, I think that's another thing. And lastly, of course, there needs to be a pretty good package of taxes, and regulation to support the build to rent space. I think that's the three things that we observe from our from the recent activities.
I think the one of the key ones with these is some of that the schemes that you spoke about, Michael. I'm hoping it will have a big effect on, I guess, on the apartment market. That's sort of been pretty well hit. A lot of our clients that have been in that development space in the apartment market have been hit. Cal, I'm not sure if you've got a particular view on that. I know you do a fair bit in that space.
Yes, Mr. Suga, this is Calvin from DCF Property Group. We just got a question targeting about the off-the-plan market. I mean, those programs are great. They're more targeted to the completed land subdivision product, completed apartments, ready to sell. But one thing in the development market, if we can't get enough pre-sale, we can't get the funding from bank to start construction. Look, building apartments, we have different beneficial to the economy. We benefit the concreters, we benefit those basement workers that land sub don't have. So importantly, would you consider extending this guarantee to off the plan, deposit that the bank recognize that deposit can be guaranteed by the government, and we can start work with the 10% requirement as usual financial close requirement?
Yeah, Calvin, look, it's a really good point you make. The apartment market's extraordinarily important, and you don't have, there are some trades and some skills that are very specific that don't transfer to the detached housing greenfield site market. So I agree. And pre-sales, this is one of the reasons why, I have a lot of people complain to me, for example. People in the street will say, why are you allowing, why do you allow foreign purchasers to buy Australian property? And I say to them, well, because sometimes the foreign purchasers are the difference between reaching the pre-sales or not reaching the pre-sales. And so, in fact, those foreign purchasers are resulting in more supply of housing in Australia, not less. But it's not an easy thing to explain, Calvin, sometimes to people who don't understand the market very well. We tweaked the first home loan deposit scheme after the first 6 months to make it more user-friendly for off-the-plan sales. So now people have 2 years so they can get their guarantee, they can lock it in. They've got then up to, I think it's 2 years, but I might check it because we know it wasn't seamless for off-the-plan originally, but we've certainly tried to address that in all of the other versions of this program, whether it's the first home loan deposit scheme, the new home guarantee, or the family home guarantee. We're very conscious that, when we're coming up with these programs, that it can't just be for the detached house. It's got to be for the apartment market too. So I was talking to the team at Meriton, who you all know, very dominant in the Sydney market. Once we made those changes, they actually saw a significant increase in the number of first home loan deposit scheme purchases, because though it was just some technical changes to the program allowed it. So Calvin, if you're still seeing problems with people getting access to the guarantees and being able to contract and purchase one of yours off the plan, please, through Mary or through Adam, reach out to me, because our intention is these programs should work identically regardless of what people choose to buy. And we don't want to tell people what they need to buy. And let's be frank, more first home buyers are going to be in the higher density, including apartment market. So these programs, I thought, have been working pretty well, but if you're seeing any issues, please feed them through Calvin, and we'd be happy to see how we can try and accommodate that.
Thanks, Mr. Suter.
Michael, thank you so much for your time today, guys. We are tipped over 3 o'clock. I know you do have a busy schedule. Thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate you taking the time out to meet with our clients, and on behalf of RSM and our clients, thank you. Have a great weekend. Thank you to our other presenters and speakers, Calvin and Selson. Contact details there on the screen, guys, if you do want to get in contact with any of our presenters today. Have a fantastic weekend and look forward to catching up with everybody soon. Thank you.
Thank you.